Welcome to the TryPod, where we break down the NRL every week, every game from a betting perspective. I'm Jacob Wynn, and as we announced last week in the season preview, I'm going to be joined in 2022 by Matthias the Padonis. Now, Matthias, season preview, I thought that went really well. People enjoyed it. The good thing about the season preview, you can't get anything totally wrong. At least nobody notices straight away. With the weekly preview, there's a bit more pressure, but are you ready, mate?
I'm ready to rock and roll. Should be great. Can't wait for round one. And yeah, last week was fun, so this week should be even better. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, some people involved in content or tips say they get nervous, but I'm honestly have gotten so excited. But I think it's because I get to work with a lot of cool people like yourself, and yeah, I just cannot wait for the footy to get underway, for the action to hit the footy fields again. And we've got so much to jam into this pod, so we're going to try and keep it short and sharp. We're off to a good start, I will say. Matthias and I, our process, we do our handicapping completely independently. You send me an email with your leans and likes, but I don't even look at that till I've completed mine. You had 5 games you either liked or leaned for a bet. I was 5 out of 5 in agreement, so that's good. We do have 2 best bets to share straight away, as will always be the case in the first 5 minutes of this show, and we're going to plenty other angles to talk through as well. Overall sense, guys, this is the 8th year of the TryPod, sharing best bets every week. And like the truth is, we've had 7 outstanding seasons, and I couldn't be prouder of those results. I might put them up on screen if you're watching this. But the disclaimer I got to start the season with is anything can happen in any game, especially in a short span of time. These bets are our best bets. They truly are what we think are the best bets of the week. But it doesn't have to be your best bet. Do not back it unless you agree, and always bet responsibly. But on that note, our best bet's at the very top, and then we get more into each and every game. And the very first best bet of 2022 is going to be the Canberra Raiders. They host the Cronulla Sharks on Friday night. We're playing them plus 1.5. Best price $2 on Ladbrokes and Neds. Next best price $1.91 on Bet365. What do you like the most about the Raiders, Matthias?
Biggest story ahead of this game is all the talk around the Fogarty injury. However, let's not forget that the Sharks are dealing with some cluster injuries of their own. The Raiders will be motivated in their home opener. They're a lot more settled squad, and we can't justify the Sharks being favoured in Canberra with a rookie head coach and a new halves combination. So Canberra are the only way that we see this game, the only way to play it as an underdog. Jacob?
Yeah, I think my reasoning also builds into what I said in the season preview. Like, I actually even have Raiders above the Sharks for the season, but especially in round 1, I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the year, Cronulla's playing a higher level of footy than the Raiders, because Cronulla's got a new coach. They've got new key positional players. But in the very first game, and, there's still no Wade Graham. There's still no Cam McInnes. So the Sharkies, I just don't think they're going to hit the ground running, whereas the Raiders have a little bit more continuity. I like them as a home underdog. I think that's a great best bet to kick us off. Second best bet, just 2 this week. We are being extra selective, and there's always that extra uncertainty. It helps when we get to see a bit more footy. So 2 to get us underway, but plus some other bets like mixed matchups and so forth. So we are taking the New Zealand Warriors plus 0.5 point in the first half, and best odds $1.88 on Ladbrokes and Neds. Next best price $1.83 on Sportsbet. What do you like about New Zealand?
So the biggest thing here for me is that I think the preseason line has moved a little bit too far in the Dragons' favour. Yes, they were impressive in the Charity Shield, but everyone's a little bit sleepy on the Warriors, and we touched on it in the season preview. We think they'll be better than the market expectation, and I think these 2 sides are evenly matched. There's not much between them, and we get the side with the bonus of no added travel and a little bit more experience. So we think the wrong team's favoured here, so let's roll with the Kiwis.
Yeah, it's a neutral venue, I should say. It's at Sunshine Coast, but you're right. The Dragons are the ones that have to travel up to Queensland. I really do think Johnson is going to energise that Warrior side so much. Like, we know Walsh is out, which is a concern, but everyone already knew Walsh was going to be suspended for round 1 regardless. And I do see it definitely being anybody's game, but that's significant to get the Warriors as an underdog. I also can't justify that. We're going to get more into those games as well, but that's just the key reasoning why they're our best bets. As I did, massive show. So mixed matchup, going to share that at the end. We've got the jersey giveaway comp. Again, wait a little longer for that. We're going to be giving away a jersey every week. We've got a cameo tip. We'll talk a little bit of season multis into all the games. Again, the season preview, we deep dive all 16 teams, and people enjoyed that episode. That's well worth watching. 80 minutes to cover the whole season. But we left a teaser. We didn't actually give our grand final predictions, which people want as well. So to put a bow on that, bit of pressure on you, Matthias, because last year I predicted Penrith over the Storm. And I think I was right. They kind of were the best two teams, and Penrith did win the comp. So, that was pretty decent prediction. But who are you going to pick for 2022, your grand final? Who takes it out?
Okay, 2022 grand final. Bit of a fool's gold trying to predict this, as you said. But the two that I'd roll grand final Penrith versus the Roosters. That's my grand final. And I'll
go on if you've got anything. If you got anything with it, or.
And let's go with the Roosters to be the premiers this year.
You know what? I'm the same, mate. I'm also going Roosters, and I think I've known deep down I was going to pick Roosters for a few months. I had that feeling, and I just probably hated the fact that a lot of other people like them as well. But I still just think, obviously, what's exciting about this year, I don't feel as confident as last year, where I really did feel quite strongly about Penrith, where this year I wouldn't be surprised if anyone in our predicted top 6 makes a grand final. And certainly I gave a lot of teams strong consideration, Storm, Bunnies. And I actually shared yesterday in the TryPod group 51-1 Roosters over Eels. So I'm not going safe. I'm going to be a bit bold, bit out there. And I'm also going to take Sydney Roosters. And that's a pretty good price for a long shot Quinella. I think two teams that'll be in the finals, and you'll still be riding that bet in September if you want to have a little chop at that. It's almost time to jump into round 1. But first we need the inside word from a bookie perspective, find out where all the action has been. So let's throw to our major sponsor, Top Sport. Here's Tristan Merlehan with Market Watch.
G'day, TryPod family. Footy's back. We have been waiting for this moment where the kickoff of round 1's tomorrow night. So there's been a lot of activity there. We obviously have had the markets up for many, many months now. So the biggest moves, they've been player related. The markets are reasonably solid for round 1 when it's just purely form-based, but then you get the elements of players withdrawing or not being named, and then you get a few little trial results. There has been a little bit of movement on the trial-based form as well, but it's primarily been focused on the team list Tuesday. So Penrith and Manly's flip. Penrith were 5.5-point favourites when we first released the market. It came into 4, and there was a lot of rumours swirling that Cleary wasn't going to play, so I'm a little bit surprised as to the magnitude of the move. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, but I'm a little bit surprised maybe that 4 or 4.5 hung up as long as it did. But now Manly are into favourites. The other big move has been South Sydney firming up to 10.5 points from 5.5 against the Broncos, with obviously no Adam Reynolds. And then a couple of form-related ones. The Dragons have gone from 4-point underdogs into $1.84 favourites against the Warriors. Now, that's been primarily trial form-based. Punters are liking what they saw against the Rabbitohs. They like the squad they're putting together. And then the other one, the Eels, on the back of their impressive victory against the Panthers, have gone from 4 flat to 6.5. So that been the biggest moves in the lead-in. It's going to be an interesting one. We saw how high the totals were with the rule changes. There's obviously a few other rule changes this year, so it's keeping an eye on that. We've probably gone up a bit higher than what we did last year to start the season in the total, so it'll be interesting if we've overreacted or underreacted. So it'll be a case of our traders will really be monitoring things over the course of the year. Now, I know a lot of you guys put together some markets for me to price, which we put a lot of time and effort into that over the weekend, and there's been a lot of uptake, which is great. So thanks for everyone for your suggestions. Hopefully you liked what the boys put together, and there's been a stack of money on the season multi that Jacob put together as well. So it's been a very popular betting off season. I think it's going to be a huge season of NRL action. I cannot wait for Thursday night when the Panthers take on Manly.
Thank you, Tristan. We do appreciate him. Pricing had to be 30 plus custom requests from members of the TryPod group for their multis, which is such good fun. You can ride all through the year. I mean, there's some that are 100-1 or 200-1. There was one I really liked that was 200-1, and then the $13 multi. Obviously, we won last year at 15-1, so I feel like everybody wanted to come back and have another chop at that. That was 13-1 for 2 full days while they were getting smashed. It's then dropped to 11. It's now into 9, so I feel like the value's kind of out of that one. That's Top Sport's way of saying, no mass, we've taken enough on that. We've got to keep the lights on here. But well done if you obviously got on that. And, the good thing about these guys, they even let me know, Top Sport, if I put a market up with them and they're like, look, we're just being absolutely killed here on nobody's betting the opposite side of the bet. So they're like, look, we're just taking a maximum amount of liability that we can. They give me the heads up. That's where if you follow on social media, you follow the TryPod on Facebook or in the group or Instagram, I give a heads up if they're saying the liability limit is getting close to being exceeded, so you still get that chance to get on if you were planning to. Now, Tristan spoke a bit about the season opener. Why don't we dive into it? So we get a cracker to begin the 2022 season. The Panthers, the reigning premiers, they host the Sea Eagles. We had a bit of a dramatic line move this week, as Tristan touched on. I'll get you to touch on that too, but the Sea Eagles find themselves 1.5-point favourites in Penrith. That is because Cleary's out, 6-point line move. O'Sullivan starts at halfback. No other major surprises. You got Crichton flipping to left centre to replace Burton, Tago to right centre. Liam Martin comes into second row to replace the loss of Capewell. On Manly side of things, they look strong. Bullimore is in. Schuster is still injured, as is Dylan Walker. So they've got young gun Kula in the utility spot. Olakoatu was in some doubt from the trials, but he will start. So, Padonis, I'll throw to you first for your angles on this game. And please start with, how big of a downgrade is that Nathan Cleary loss?
Yeah, so there was a topic that you talked about last year on that. We had a pod on how valuable are these key players worth to a team. So, look, there was some factored into the line that Cleary may or may not play already, as Tristan alluded to in his opener. I sort of feel like the market's moved a little bit too far in Manly's favour. I sort of had Cleary around 5.5 points to what he's worth to the team, considering that their spine and the forward pack is still stacked around him. They're not so reliant on him as what we come in past years with guys like Turbo, for example, at Manly, where he's worth a lot more to the team. So O'Sullivan comes in, he'll be serviceable there, I think. They'll let Luai, Coruscant, and Mitch Kenny off the bench sort of control their game and try to beat Manly through the ruck, because I think that Penrith have a clear edge in the forward pack. And even though it's stopped raining at the moment in Sydney, there's a lot of heavy and sloppy ground underfoot. So when the game is wet, that sort of leads me to sort of lean towards the stronger forward pack, and that is the Panthers. And you've touched on a few of those injuries that Manly have, still missing Schuster. And look, another factor for me as well is that, look, Manly are going to be good this year. There's no question about that. But are they going to hit the ground running? I don't expect them to. So I think the market's taken into account their form last year and the form of Turbo in particular. We sort of addressed that in the preseason, that look, it was a 1 in 20-year season. So is that going to strike twice, especially right off the gate? I don't think so. When you look at last year, they played 4 games against the other top 3 teams. He had no line breaks, only 4 line break assists. So the big teams can contain him, and Penrith are pretty good defensively. And the other factor as well, that historically there's a natural boost in intensity when the premiers play their home opener. So I'd sort of would lean Penrith. I was close to making them as a bet, but ultimately, considering that they are resting Cleary, it sort of makes me feel like they're taking the cautious approach to start the year, so they wouldn't be opposed to dropping the game. So that's probably enough to keep me off it. How'd you say it?
Yeah, we touched on that in the season preview, that they're not going to have any urgency and they're not going to be prioritizing how they start. It's all about where they're at in 5 months' time, and that's loud and clear. Last year, Cleary was playing with a bad shoulder when he probably shouldn't have been. Now, he probably could play, but they're being more cautious and he's not playing. I tend to agree with what Tristan said, that like that line move did seem extreme, moving 6 points, because it was like 4.5 everywhere, and now it's flipped the other way to -1.5 to Manly. And it's like, even if you're saying Cleary's worth 6 points, that original line, there was no certainty Cleary was going to play. We alluded to this in the season preview. Like, it was a bit of a surprise on Tuesday when he was ruled out for 3 weeks, but you had to think it was a possibility that he wouldn't be playing because he had major off-season surgery. So he needs to get it completely right. They're not taking any chances with that. So I agree, overreaction. Now let's talk about that intensity. I think there's a case for both teams. You got the home opener, very meaningful for Penrith because the comp got relocated to Queensland last year, and now they get to play in front of their home fans. On the other hand, you said Manly might not come out of the gate quick. They did have such a bad start last year, lost the first 4 and had to chase the whole season, still got in the top 4. I think that there will be a real will and focus to start better, and this is a big opportunity, getting to play the champs without Cleary. So I do think it's big motivation and energy for Manly as well. As you say, more pressure on Appy and Luai. If you look at the stats in the last couple of years, it's 2 different teams, Penrith with or without Cleary. So it is still a big loss. And ultimately, I'm kind of with you. My lean to Penrith, but I think it's going to be a fantastic game to kick off the season. I think Penrith overall has a better 1-17. but I am not going to discount Turbo, the fact that he can swing a game as well. And I also, what keeps me off Penrith, even though they're an underdog, is maybe they've just had a lighter preparation. They've had a shorter preseason. They were celebrating late last year. So even though they might have an energetic home crowd behind them, is that counteracted if they haven't got as many miles in the legs in the preseason? That's always a question mark in my mind. That's going to be a theme as we get into some of these games. Let's go to Friday. And again, we've already shared the best bet. It's Raiders hosting the Sharks. Sharks minus 1.5 point favorites in Canberra at GIO. So we'll go a bit deeper into why we do like this best bet. But just to set the table, Nickel Klukstad gets the start at fullback ahead of Savage, who's not in the 17. They've got Schiller in the centres ahead of Croker, who's playing reserve grade, but also trying to get his knee right potentially. But he hasn't been the same player for a few years, to be honest. Chotrich back and on the wing. Schneider gets the start at halfback with Fogarty out long term. Adam Elliott, new club debut, will be from the bench. For Cronulla, Mulatalo to centres. Moylan gets 5/8 start. Hines halfback. Finucane will get his first start and be captain at lock. How do you see this one?
The Canberra Raiders are winning the wooden spoon, aren't they? That's what all the publicity is sort of leading towards. Jamal Fogarty is a big loss, but he's I think they can cope with it. And we sort of touched on it at the top. 21-year-old Brad Schneider steps in, but in the past years, Canberra, so last year in particular, their halfback wasn't really that strong anyway in Williams, so he was sort of like that replacement style anyway. So I think they're well equipped to cope with that with the spine they do have, and choosing Nickel Klokstad at fullback lends me to believe that they are going with more settled and tried and tested option. So right off the gate at round one, that sort of appeals to me. And they've got 2 weeks to prepare as well. It's not like Fogarty's been ruled out this week and it's sort of impacted their week. So I think that helps them in good stead. All the in-house turmoil Canberra had last year, they'll be focused and energized. They want to start the year well in front of their home fans as well. The Sharks as well, dealing with some cluster injuries, like as we touched on, Tracy, McInnes, Wade Graham, and even Braden Trindle's out. So all of a sudden now with those injuries, Canberra are an underdog at home. Sharks are expected to come in as a favourite in Canberra on what is a night game with a rookie head coach in Fitzgibbon. We touched on it in the season preview that they might start slow and build in their combinations. They've got a brand new halves as well with Hines and Moylan as a combination there. How well will they go and gel together? Not too sure. They probably need time to develop. I can see Canberra getting on top in this game with their halves are a lot more settled. And if Canberra are on top in the forward pack, I'm not sure that Hines is capable of regaining that momentum for him and controlling the game. So I've got Canberra winning, and I was surprised that the Lions moved that heavily in their favour.
Yeah, like all the talks about Nico Hines, to me, is not a natural halfback. So I'm sure he'll catch the ball deep and at second receiver as well and roam a bit. But like the pressure on him, and he will have to kick more often. And I think the two key players in this game could actually be Canberra Raiders, and that would be Josh Hodgson and Jack Whiten. And I think these guys are players who, are used to the teammates around them and every bit as good as Nico Hines and can ultimately decide this game. Plus, I give the edge to the Raiders forward pack that you touched on. I think their bench is stronger as well, and they're the home team. I agree. This is what we call WTF, wrong team favoured. That's why we got to take the Raiders as an underdog. Let's move to the later game Friday. Broncos host the Rabbitohs. The Rabbitohs are minus 10.5. I lean Brisbane off the bat, but we should, of course, mention Reynolds was out. Then he was in. Then he was out again. Albert Kelly gets a start at halfback. Kevin Walters' son, Billy, debuts for the club at 6. Izako has been chosen at fullback, Cobbo wing. Staggs is in the centres. Turpin, hooker. Capewell will debut for the club and captain them at the second row. And on the bench, some new recruits, Ryan James and Tyrone Roberts. For Souths, no Latrell. He's chomping at the bit. He's fired up. He'd love to be playing, but he's not. It's Blake Taff at 1. Jackson Paulo, is in the centres, replacing Gagai. Lockie Ilias is getting his second first-grade start at 7, partnering Walker, as we know, and pretty much the same forward pack that got him to the grand final. What do you make of this one?
Yeah, this one was a bit of a head scratcher for me, with the game completely flipping on its head, as you mentioned with Reynolds, they're missing. And the line moved 6 points. It was 4.5. It's moved to 10 now. I'm not sure how valuable Reynolds was going to be at this stage in the season in a brand new team. So I don't know if I justify that 6 points. So my initial feelings in this game was I was going to lean South because I think they're a little bit underrated heading into the season. Because I think people were taking too much away from losing Reynolds, and Mitchell was already missing, which we already knew. But the one thing stopping me is that Brisbane are in a home opener, and they've got a bit of X factor in Stags, who missed both games last year against Souths. So I didn't really have too much in this game. I think the line's in that sort of dead zone where I can't really play it either way, and I think it's one we just watch and learn about the two teams.
I'll add what I think, but I would like to ask you why you didn't have a lean to Brisbane then with that big adjustment and getting into double digits. Because for me that is the way I lean. Like, I do think Souths will win the game, and to me, when I look at the sides, the biggest difference is 9 and 6 is what Damien Cook and Cody Walker can do, and in the clutch moments they can decide this game. But it would be Brisbane or nothing for me, because again, Souths are a side that proved in the last couple of years that it's better to build into a season. And if you want to have success at the end of the year, you don't have to be a finished product at the beginning of the year. Whereas the reports are the opposite out of Brisbane, that there's been complaints Kevy's pushed his team too hard in preseason. Now, if anything, that's a good thing for early in the year because there should be the fitter team and they're in front of their home fans. It reminds me a bit of 2021, actually, the season opener for Brisbane. They played Parramatta, and I knew Brisbane's nowhere near as good as Parramatta, but I didn't want to touch them because I just thought that energy and that fitness, and in fact, Brisbane was up 16-0, although they did end up getting steamrolled later in that game. But yeah, I think Brisbane's the only way you could play this. I think if you're going to criticise the halves, Albert Kelly and Billy Walters, they're not the kind of players that will be shy or overawed, and they have some genuine superstars around them in the forward pack and also in the outside backs. When you look at a guy like Katoni Staggs, just get him the ball. So I think, yeah, South's class gets them home, but I could only take the points. Did you have any other reason? Like, is there anything why you're not confident enough in Brisbane?
That's a fair point, but I sort of looked at the 4.5 before the Reynolds news, and to me, it looked a little bit too light because I think
I agree.
Heading into the preseason, people were sort of taking away too much from South when we know how stacked they are. And how good will Brisbane be? And everyone knows in the preview, I tipped them to come 7. So I think they will make the top 8 this year. But I think they'll build into the year just as much as South will build into the year. So that's where I was coming from. But it's probably a game where it's not really strong enough either way for me to put my money down. So I'm happy to roll it into the next game.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. And like, we don't have that much certainty, and the bookies don't get every game wrong. So we don't have to, we're not being forced to pick a bet in every game. That's the one advantage we have. So let's move to Saturday, where the Roosters host the Knights at the SCG, and the Knights are 14.5-point underdogs. So we get Walker and Keary in the halves. They've never played together in the NRL level. And in fact, Luke Keary and Victor Radley have not played together for nearly 2 years either, because they've both had season-ending injuries in consecutive years. So that's quite exciting to have those three on the field. You got some changes in the back line. Billy Smith and he's had some injuries, but he's a promising young outside back. Momirovski, who's just won back-to-back comps, joins the back line. They bring Lindsay Collins back from injury last year. Manu had an injury last year, but he's playing. Connor Watson rejoins his former team and is going to be starting at hooker. That is also because Verrills is suspended. For the Knights, Gagai back in red and blue. Adam Clune takes Mitchell Pearce's number 7 jersey, so he joins Clifford in the halves. Randall is at hooker because of the preseason injury to Brayley. Daniel Saifidi also injured in the preseason. His brother does get the start in the prop, and Kurt Mann will be playing lock this season, so he starts at 13. This is the biggest line of the all-round one. Take it away, Padonis.
Yeah, it is the biggest line of the round. On face value, to me, it's a little bit inflated because I think the Knights do still have a solid lineup, like outside of the 6, 7, and 9 positions, which are quite weak. And let's not forget the Roosters are introducing Watson into the side, introducing Momirovski into the side, and Keary and Collins are both coming back from season-ending injuries. So it might take a bit of time for them to get back up to full speed into the contact of the NRL. And if the Knights forward pack can sort of hang around in the game with the Roosters, then I think the Knights can keep the game close. But what's ultimately keeping me off leaning the Knights is that I know how quick scoring and dynamic the Roosters can be when they can turn it on. So that's enough for me to sort of stay off the game, knowing that if the Knights do get behind, like how confident will you feel taking 12 points, head start, or 13 and a half, whatever it is, knowing that the Roosters could take advantage of the rule changes and the momentum. They're as good as any side doing it. And they're at home as well. A lot of these teams that had to relocate last year, they sort of have something to prove now being at home. So unless I really feel strongly about an away team, I think this is the week where we just need to be a bit more cautious on how we sort of see the lines.
Yeah, because some of these sides haven't played in front of raucous home crowds for a while. The Roosters are formidable at the SCG. To me, I agree with how you see the game, and I think weather is a huge factor because I think if it's decent conditions, that really aids the favourite and the ability for the Roosters to play footy. If it's poor conditions, then, as you say, the Knights, their strength is their forward pack. It brings them back into the game. And so I think that's the key, that if the Knights can keep it tight, then anything's possible, or certainly if they got a lead. But if they're chasing points, you do feel like the Roosters are smart enough to shut down Ponga, and then I really think the Knights would struggle to catch up. This is the kind of game where I'd feel pretty safe about Roosters as a multi-leg straight up. And I do think there's a clear gap in the halves with Keary and Walker that I touched on before. That's really special. And then you mix in Radley. And we've got to mention Tedesco too. But it doesn't mean it's going to click instantly. I do think back to 2018 where, Cronk joined the team, Teddy joined the team. They took months for their attack to get right. So, yeah, it might be an inflated line. Certainly if you play these big favourites with the minus, bookies aren't doing you any favors with the number of points you've got to lay. So I think I would lean to the Roosters, but I'm not going to lay that number of points in round one. Let's move on. Later on Saturday, the Warriors play the Dragons, a game we've touched on before because we have a best bet on this. Up at the Sunshine Coast, Dragons have moved into slight favoritism, -1.5. Our best bet is plus half a point in the first half of the Warriors. And another reason I like that is because in a tight game, that plus half a point is more valuable to me than a plus 1.5 for the full game, because there is a decent amount of the time, maybe even close to 10% of the time, the game can be level scores at half time. So, and you're going to win with the plus half a point. I did mention Walsh suspended, so Harris Tavita is going to play fullback. Nick Arima will partner Sean Johnson in the halves. And for the Dragons, they do have an exciting young fullback who's playing Sloan. Amon is in the halves with Hunt. They've got Bird and Sewer in the back row with DeBellin locking the scrum. Aaron Woods getting a start for his new club prop. And a couple other newbies in Mbai and Molo who joined the bench. You can say this Dragons side is pretty deep when you consider they've left out George Burgess, left out Tarek Sims. I want to hear your thoughts on this game, Padonis, of course, but we do have a bonus breakdown. Let's listen to that one right now.
Hey guys, Robbie Farah here. Everyone's excited for the start of the NRL season this week. Can't wait to watch some footy. Some massive games this weekend. But for me, the value for the weekend are the Dragons coming up against the Warriors. I think the Dragons have had a really good preseason. A couple of good performances in preseason. They've signed well, a lot of experience in their side. I think they can get the job done against the Warriors this week. So jump on Dabble, have some banter with your friends, copy some bets and have some fun. Cheers, guys.
So we're head-to-head with Robbie, so we find out who knows more about footy, really. The guy that's got 300-odd NRL games or a couple of battlers like you and I. Before we actually talk more about Dragons and Warriors, mate, you've been on Dabble for a week or so. I'm just going to put you on the spot. What's your favourite feature about the Dabble app?
Favourite feature would have to be the copy bet function. I think it's quite intuitive. You can follow your favourite tipsters through the little bell icon, and once they post something, then you can instantly get a push notification and you can copy the bet and away you go rather than have to scroll through market. So I think it's pretty good, and I think Dabble has been a great addition to the pod so far.
In fact, I found myself sharing an NFL Super Bowl bet this morning. There was a massive trade, a big quarterback changed teams. Team was paying 26-1. A lot of other bookies had halved the price, still 26-1 on Dabble. I posted it, people got notifications, and my favorite part is the feed. It's like, I like just scrolling through the feed and seeing what people have backed, and you put your reasoning. So it's quite similar to the TryPod app, and it's like similar in the sense like a Facebook group that you can see the picks, the odds, the reasoning, and you can press copy bet, as you said. Okay,
and it goes to show that Sorry, and it goes to show that the pod never sleeps. So if there's value to be had across any sport,
and I did not wake up today looking to find an NFL player, but sometimes the best bets, they find you. Sometimes it's not the other way around. All right, so we're talking about Warriors Dragons, and Robbie's saying that's his favourite play of the round. We do disagree, and you can go a little bit more into why, mate.
Yeah, so Robbie Farah there sort of like epitomised to me the public perception on the Dragons, and that's probably shows you why the line has moved 5 points in the Dragons' favour. Because don't forget, all preseason they were a 4.5 point underdog,
right?
And Reece Walsh was already suspended and missing from the game, so that's not new information to us in terms of this line move. So I think it's moved too far. Yes, the Dragons were ultra impressive in their Charity Shield win, but let's not forget that it was only a trial, and the limitations that we sort of saw on this side preseason are still there. They haven't sort of absolved. Sean Johnson, as you touched on, has flown under the radar as a pretty good signing, and he'll re-energise that side. And I just don't see the Dragons forward pack being able to create much momentum and positive yardage. They've got such a young and inexperienced backline behind them. So how much will they be able to take advantage of slow rucks? And you touched on Tariq Sims. I think he's injured. I'm not sure if he was dropped or not, but they're also missing Josh Maguire as well. So that's two key experienced forwards there. And the Warriors have relocated to the Sunshine Coast, Redcliffe area before Christmas. So even though it's a neutral field for all intents and purposes, we're going to say that that's a home field for them. I had a look today, there are 25,000 New Zealand passport holders in that region. So I think there will still be plenty of support behind the Warriors. And I can only play them because I still see them as I see this game as tight, and I see them as being the slight favourite, so they should be. So I'm happy to take the points, and our best bet is in the first half line, as you touched on, a little bit more edge to the 1.5 full game.
Yeah, a lot of talk about the Dragons forwards, but when I looked at this matchup, I wasn't convinced that the Dragons had the better forward pack. I think it's an evenly matched forward battle. I think that the Warriors in their own right have some quality forwards. I also, definitely think Sean Johnson is going to energise, and he is going to lift up players around him, like in a different way to RTS, where RTS freed up guys because all the attention was on him, so other players could shine. But Johnson can bring the best out of everybody else, and I'm expecting to see that. Now, look, Harris Tavita at fullback, it does worry me, but at least they've known that all preseason that he would have to play there. Now, mentioning the preseason, it is worth mentioning the Warriors didn't get their second preseason game. So, is that a concern? It's not ideal because there were only 2 preseason games per club. They didn't get one. But overall, I think that we might have another WTF game here, basically. I also reckon it could be close, but I would take the Warriors, and we're getting them as an underdog. So we will play that as a best bet. And we think the best way to execute that is a greater edge in the first half plus half a point. Moving to Saturday night, the Tigers host the Storm at Campbelltown. The Storm are minus 13.5 point favourites. So for the Tigers, Laurie is back at 1. James Roberts still in this team in the centres. They've got a Pommy recruit, Gildart, also in the centres. Jack Hastings is back over from the Super League, starting at 5'8", with Brooks in the halves. Simpkin is the hooker. Peachy is on the bench at 14, and I imagine he'll come on and play some lock as well, and often Gowie can switch to prop. For the Storm, people didn't know if Pappy was definitely going to start, but he has been named at 1. Xavier Coates will debut on the wing. Nick Meaney named at 6. I find that one a bit of a head scratcher, but I do notice that Jaden Nikorima is on the bench, so I think Bellamy could be keeping his opponent guessing. Brandon Smith starts at 9 with Harry Grant out. It's kind of a big deal that the Storm were able to classify the All-Star game as a suspension game for Brandon Smith, because if he wasn't playing in this one, obviously Munster is out as well. And I did also notice Nelson Asafa-Solomona does take his place on the bench. What are your biggest factors in this one?
Yeah, so my biggest factors for this game, and similar to what we said for the Roosters game, is that when you've got these big favourites in round 1, you're sort of paying a premium on it. And the fact that Melbourne are such a historically good team to start the season, they're always focused and fit, then you are sort of paying for that price. Grant and Munster and Lewis are sort of doubts over those suspensions. And then earlier in the week when I was looking at the game, I was unsure whether Pappenhausen was going to play. So he was a pretty big inclusion for me because that is sort of a game breaker, and that the guy through the middle there can help support his forward pack. So initially I was leaning the Tigers before that news, but then I was leaning the Storm after Pappenhausen was named in. But then ultimately what's keeping me off is that Michael Maguire's coaching style, as we touched on, it's got a tendency to burn the players out as the season progresses. But I think in round 1 and early on in the season, the Tigers will be as fit and intense as any other team, sort of works earlier on. So that was enough for me to sort of pass the game, knowing that Melbourne do have those outs, and potentially looking forward to bigger games in the next few weeks.
Yeah, I like playing Maguire teams early in the season because he does push his players too hard. He has an emphasis on their fitness, but then sometimes they get burnt out. But then there's talk this year that he's softened, that he's given players a day off, and what he's trying to do is adapt his ways and stay in favour with the players. And long term, that might actually be smart, but that doesn't help him in round 1. So now I'm kind of second guessing, will the Tigers definitely be fitter? And you can't say that the Storm don't come into seasons fit, because what's the record? It's 20 straight years, I think, give or take, winning the opening game of the season. Now, if you're going to knock the Storm, you can say unfamiliar spine, depending on, no matter what they do, but like Meaney at 6, we'll see what actually happens on the field there. Bit more pressure on the halfbacks on both sides. Jerome Hughes to control the game, be the dominant half, and likewise for Luke Brooks. And you got Pappenhausen, who's very deadly, and especially in the first game of the season where everyone's match fitness is not 100%. If you get any fatigue, anybody lagging in the middle of the field, he will strike. You can make the same case for Dane Laurie, though. He's that similar type of player too, but the Storm have generally a bit better line integrity and a little bit more discipline. The Storm also have 6 internationals in their forward pack. So I'm not going to go against the Melbourne Storm in this one. But as you said, we're similar to the Roosters game. We've got a premium if you want to play the favourite. So I'm happy to move on to Sunday, where the Eels host the Titans at CommBank Stadium. So there goes my joke that I used to like to have every week. I have to think of something new. The Eels have some new faces in their back line. Russell on the wing, Simonson on the other wing, Penasini, who we did see last year. Rest of the squad is still very stable and very strong. I mean, they haven't even picked Nathan Brown or Bryce Cartwright. So they've got a bit of depth. Titans are going to go full-time with Campbell, Jaden Campbell at fullback. So Brimson now moves into 5'8" and partners Sexton. Isaac Liu is debuting for the club at prop. Will Smith is on the bench. What do you reckon?
Just before we touch on the game, for all those people out there who do like a word pun, I've got a new stadium name for you. Just swap out the O and the U for your imagination. It's
a bit crude, mate. Come on, we're slightly above that, aren't we? We're probably not much above that. We'll go back to the drawing board. Maybe someone like Matty Blanche will come up with something really witty for us. But what about in terms of betting on this game?
Yeah, so I touched on it in the preview, but given the way that the Eels did end their season last year, I think there's a renewed focus and energy within their 4 walls that this is a premiership push for them. I think the biggest discrepancy between the two teams is the spines. So you've got Gutho, Moses, Brown, and Marnie all knowing their roles, much more settled and much more complete. Whereas on the other side, there's some doubt around Brinson even playing in this game, but I'm expecting him to ultimately play. But how will he go paired with Toby Sexton, who's a new combination with him? They've got Jaden Campbell at the back, and then they've also got a new number 9 in Aaron Clark. So against many other teams, I think that the Titans could sort of compensate for that lack of cohesion with their forward pack being able to get on top and control the opposition's forward pack. But I don't think they'll get that luxury against Parramatta, who'll sort of match them up front and maybe even get on top of them. And as we've seen in a short space of time, the Eels have proven their home field to be one of the most intimidating home fields in the NRL. And I think they can stretch the Titans team around the park. I think it'll dry out a lot more over the weekend. So at a 4:00 game, I'd favour Parramatta in that respect. I think this was the biggest lean that I had this week where we couldn't come up to a best bet and I couldn't sort of get you over the line on this. But I'd lean Eels. I thought the line was always too light all preseason, and I'd have it closer to 8. So that's why I sort of leaned Eels. But how did you see the game?
I agree. I also leaned to Eels, and one of the biggest reasons why I just didn't want to make them a best bet is because that line was -5.5 all preseason, and I deliberately didn't want to lock myself into any round 1 bets, but I kind of felt like I was going to like Parramatta in this game. I feel like even 2 days ago it's -5.5, and then when I go to my handicap and I go, yeah, I do like Parramatta, and then I go and check the line again, of course, now it's 7.5, and I don't really know what's changed since then, but now you're paying that extra premium. And again, I think Parramatta has a chance to be successful. I think they have a club that can go deep as they've ever gone this year. And there's a little bit of a trend that I think the smartest teams and the ones that have the most success in September don't come out too hard in March. So I think sometimes you get more value backing the teams that are under a bit more pressure to start well and fading the teams that everyone thinks are going to be, at the top of the standings at the end. So I'm not certain that Parramatta is necessarily the fitter or sharper side right now. Ultimately, the biggest factor in this game for me is that spine continuity again, and the key positional players and the class of those players. And you look at the difference in this game could be Mitchell Moses' kicking game right there. So I agree with you. I could only play Parramatta. If the line was a little bit lower, I'd be on them. But in saying that, the Titans can still be competitive here. And I do think the Titans have got a hell of a forward pack, which we all know, which for them, and again, weather, factors in. And if the Titans forward pack can get on top, and if their halves can have a good game and take advantage of their opportunities, I wouldn't be shocked either if the Titans could spring an upset. So this should be a pretty entertaining game. I didn't get over the line for a best bet, but final game of the round is the Cowboys hosting the Bulldogs at QBC up in Townsville. The Bulldogs are a 1.5 point underdog. Major personnel news. Hammer is the fullback, Valentine Holmes to centre. Dearden gets a start at 6, Townsend at 7. Cohen Hess is going to play front row. Taumalolo still there at lock. For the Dogs, bunch of fresh faces. So Dufty is in, Burns, Naden, Addo-Carr, Burton, 5'8", and Avarillo will partner him. And I know we're shorting the Dragons a bit for 2022. Sorry, the Dogs for 2022. But I look at the forward packs, some powerful players in there. Vaughan, Thompson, Jackson in the middle with a bit of aggression of TPJ and Hetherington on the edges. Now, we did our season preview. These sides were 16 and 15 for you. So can you split them?
Last season's bottom two, and both of these sort of clubs will see this as a winnable match. I think similar to the game before where I was trying to lean Eels and try to get you over the line, I think you lean Cowboys more in this game and couldn't quite get me over the line for this one. I know that the Bulldogs are well supported in the market all preseason, and win that camp, but I don't believe their tackle will look as good as what the signings lead us to believe on paper. I think the backs and the halves are pretty even between the two teams. And the question for me is whether the forward pack for the Cowboys can compete with the Bulldogs. If I remove Tomalolo from that rotation, it does look a bit weak to me. So that's probably my one reservation with taking the Cowboys. Otherwise, I question how effective Burton and Avarillo will be as two running halves. And the Dogs do have to travel to Townsville, which is traditionally a lot harder early on in the season with the extra humidity and the heat that they do experience up there. So I could only play the Cows, but it's another coin flip game where I'm happy to lean with the Cowboys. If they want underdog, it'd be a different story. But as a pick'em, I'll sort of have to stay away from the game.
Yeah, I can make cases for both teams. When you can do that, you probably don't have a really slam dunk on one side. And conditions is a big thing because they talk about the humidity in Townsville. The ball is actually slipperier than a rainy game. So it is a real thing, getting used to those conditions. And you talk about the forward battle, on paper, it does look to me like that would be the avenue for the Dogs to get the edge, get on top. And even though they won't gel and they're not going to be a finished product, they do still have talented outside backs and they have players that can take advantage of opportunities that are presented if the Bulldogs forward pack gets on top. However, it's never as simple as that. And looking at the teams on paper for game one, you don't always know what you're going to get. I think Taumalolo himself had an off year last year, had injuries and, played in different positions and minutes and stuff. But if he comes out strong, and I get the feeling that a few of these guys that are unheralded, untouted Cowboy forwards will step up because it's just about time. They've been so underwhelming for so many years. So I could see some lesser-known names have a big game for the Cowboys at home. But I could also see a scenario where the Dogs actually take advantage of the fact they're playing potentially the worst defense in the comp and do have a bit of success, run some points in and win. And then we get a false narrative that Barrett's fixed the problems and that Burton's the second coming. And then we might have value on the Bulldogs. So that could work out as well. So could see it going either way. Ultimately, I definitely lean to the Cowboys if I have to pick a winner. Just not quite best bet confidence, but we have still built it in to take advantage for value in our mixed matchups. So the mixed matchup this week and last season, 70% winners, 21-9. on 30 tips and average winning odds over $2.50, $2.55. Nobody's ever going to do that again. I just want to say, including us, no one's going to win 70% out of 30 tips at $2.55, but we will do our best. And this week we're going Raiders to outscore Bulldogs, and that's paying $2.45, where a tie is a loss, just if people are new to the mixed matchup. It's how many points the Raiders score on Friday night needs to be more than how many the Bulldogs amass on Sunday. And I do think it's a big game at home for North Queensland. If you can't stop the team that was by far the worst attack in the competition last year, you're not going to stop anybody in 2022. So I think that game can be tight. And I think the Raiders are being underrated and written off because Fogarty's out. So we're getting an underdog price on that for the Raiders to score more than the Bulldogs. It's a max stake $200 if you like that on Top Sport. And of course, join with the promo code TryPod, TRYPOD. If you want to get amongst it on Toppy, you know that they come up with a lot of unique and great markets for us. I'll tease ahead a special market that's coming for 2022, which won't be on this show, but will be on the next show I'm on, which is later tonight, Winning Mood, which is a super coach and punting crossover show. We've got a try scorers bet, 3 try scorers every week, and only 2 of them need to score for the bet to win. And we've got a juicy $3 odds, 2 out of 3 ain't bad bet. So that's coming up if you watch Winning Mood, which is at 8:30 tonight, Wednesday night, Queensland time, or listen. Of course, guys, if you're watching this, the audio is available. If you're listening, the video is available. We try and throw some graphics on the screen, but I don't mind either way. There's a case for just listening and not seeing my mug, and there's a case for watching and the extra graphics that we put up and the odds and stuff if you like it that way. So consume the pod however you like. Any thoughts on that mixed matchup, Matheus?
That's actually a pretty sharp point there on the Jamal Fogarty injury. I was sort of leaning towards an under in that game, but it makes sense that the market sort of thinks that there's less points than what it should be. So I definitely like that angle, and those are the 2 teams we lean. So let's roll at $2.40.
And it's even as simple as if we don't think the Sharks are going to be as successful with the footy, that means there could be more opportunities the other way, and it's more likely the Raiders can win the game. And then if the Sharks are chasing points, and they might, force things, make mistakes. So yeah, I'm looking at the Raiders to get anywhere like 20 or more. I think we've got great odds at $2.45. Now, speaking of great odds, guys, we didn't have a best bet with Dabble this week, but there will be plenty of bets coming out on Dabble. The Futures Multi, which is Storm and Roosters to both finish top 4. We've both just picked Roosters to win the comp, and we both had Storm minor premiers, so we definitely like them top 4. And Rabbitohs Eels to be in the 8, just the 8, and we see them as true contenders. That's $8 odds. They said they'd definitely keep it up for 24 hours when we shared it last week. They've just been they've kept it up there, and the limit is no joke either. The limit is very healthy. Over 400 people have actually copied that bet off my account when I posted it a week ago. And I'm giving you guys the heads up because if you're listening or watching now, it's still up now, even though they said that it's hitting a very high liability limit. It's still up if you want to get at that last chance tonight. I love getting a nice juicy futures bet on where you have fun and you've got teams to cheer on all season long. And sometimes you don't even need to bet more games down the line because you already got something at stake. So there's lots of reasons why getting a great price. Try and get that multi any other bookie. All the competitors are under $6. Now, the funny thing is, most bookies are ripping you off with these multis of top 4, top 8, because the more teams you add, you're working against yourself because there's less spots to make up. So it's less likely that, teams are going to make the 8 if you've already picked 3 other teams. But the bookies don't give you any extra advantage of that. So they're happy for you to multi those prices. It's not in your favor. Where Dabble are giving us a true representation of the probability. And I actually love that price at $8. So I definitely encourage people having a go at that. As I say, even though the liability limit is massively up there, why not get a bit more on, get some for yourself if you still can. Plenty of reasons to give Dabble a shot. And we haven't even told you all the features tonight, but we'll share more about why we're really happy to be partnered with them through the year. Biggest thing I can say is when any business approaches me and says, we want to partner with you, the first question I ask is, what can you do for followers? What can you do for TryPod followers? Not what can you do for me? We'll figure that out afterwards, but can you bring something to the table for followers? That's what I always want to do with anybody that partners with us. Oh, okay. And speaking of that, now back to our other major sponsor, TopSport. They are generously giving away an NRL jersey every week. Here is how you win it. You comment on this video. You can be on Facebook or YouTube. And in fact, it's one entry per person, but we will let you have one entry on Facebook and jump onto YouTube and comment as well if you want. So you can double your chances. And in fact, you can quadruple your chances if you comment on the winning mood pod as well. Here's all you've got to guess. We're going to take the Sunday Channel 9 game every week. So that is Eels Titans. You have to comment the last try scorer, so the player that scores last, and the minute that they're going to score. So for example, Campbell, 75. Okay. The minute you do not have to hit exact, that's the tiebreaker. So obviously, depending on how many people have a crack at this, more than one person could get the right last try scorer. If you go for someone safe, if you go for a winger or whatever, more people might have it. But on the other hand, you might go for something a bit more out there. You might take a forward or something to score. And if you get that, you're much more likely to win the jersey, but it's less likely to score. So obviously use your own judgment there. And the final tiebreaker, if two people get the same player and same minute, will be who commented earlier. But doesn't cost you anything. And that's all just thanks to TopSport. So again, comment Facebook, comment YouTube. If you're listening to this right now, you've got between now and Sunday to jump onto Facebook, jump onto YouTube, as well as giving us some friendly feedback on the pod, have a comment, have a chance to win. And if you watch Winning Mood, same prop. And we're going to offer guesses, open up for guesses on the same market as well. And whoever's closest out of the 4 spots of those 2 shows on 2 channels will have a jersey mailed out to them of their choice every week. Tiny bit more to cover, mate. I put up today our posting schedule. So obviously, if you want the best bets, you should watch. Ideally, you watch live, it plays 15 minutes earlier on YouTube. If you guys want the best bets, always put them in the first 5 minutes, plus mix matchup, plus anything else that we like then and there we'll tell you about in the show. We don't hold back. Then after potentially we let the dust settle, on every Thursday, Padonis is going to put up a multi for the round, and that could be on any bookie depending on where we get the best odds. So any of the bookies that we trust, there's several of them. Obviously, Toppy, Dabble, Bet365, Ladbrokes, Neds, Sportsbet, Unibet. It'll be on one of them. Find that on the TryPod Facebook group and the Facebook page. And even if you subscribe to the TryPod YouTube channel, I'm going to even post it in the where you can post images on YouTube. So obviously, we're not going to have the app at our disposal, but it'll also be on the TryPod website. So I've kind of laid out how you can follow us. And then every Friday, I will have a juicy Dabble multi. So if you subscribe to me, get notifications when I tip, Friday morning, I'll have a multi for the round with the 7 remaining games. I'll pick at least 4 or 5 legs of my favorite, backed up by what we've discussed on the pod. And we'll have a multi. There's going to be probably other Dabble multis, right, Padonis? You're working on a collab multi plus anything you cook up yourself?
Yeah, for sure. So we're working on a collaboration multi between myself, Jacob, and a few of the other key tipsters you've seen throughout the TryPod and Facebook group over the last 12 to 18 months. So that'll happen every Friday as well, where we'll pick our favorite leg across multiple sports. So that's something for other followers to join, and another reason to get excited about Dabble. Just remember the TryPod code when you sign up, and let's have a great season.
And that code makes you instantly follow at Padonis and at Jacob Wynn and a few of the other guys in the TryPod family. It also throws you straight into the exclusive chat, which is going to be our group chat for when the games are going on and leading up to the games. Very worthwhile jumping in and checking that out. And also friend Matteo Padonis in the Facebook group, because you're posting there. And if you're friends with someone, you get notifications. And that goes for making yourself get notifications on the TryPod Facebook page. Basically, the more you follow us, the more chance you're never going to miss a quality tip or miss great odds. Okay, we've gone over time. I really want us to aim for 40 minutes every week, but we had so much ground to cover. We're actually, as well as saying, of course, gamble responsibly and really enjoy the footy coming back, I think we got to give a mini tribute to a legend that was lost in the last week. So I just want to say, rest in peace, Warnie. For me, not a big cricket guy, but like I know what the true definition of a master when I see one, and he was a master at what he did and an icon that transcended the sport that he played. So rest in peace, and our wishes are with Warnie's family. Enjoy the season, guys, and always gamble responsibly.